Thanks for taking a few minutes to check out this video preview so that you can use this intervention to the fullest with your students. So with all of my intervention booklets, both reading and math, the left-hand side of the book is the same day in and day out. It's the same way of starting on day 1 as it is on day 4. It's the same way that we start on week 1 versus week 40. They're the same. But on the right-hand side of the page then, there will be other pieces that we can then talk about to work on fluency and vocabulary, writing, other really important skills. So let's talk about this left-hand side of the page. I always start with a research-based strategy of arm tapping our words. So with this, I always have a flashcard for each of these words. And with that, I'm going to ask my students, does anybody know this word? Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It really depends on what if they've been able to practice with you in previous settings, what if they practice in their classroom. Sometimes they know it and sometimes they don't. That's okay, that's why we're here. So I would tell them this word, or maybe they know, and then we arm tap it. A-R-E, R, A-R-E, R, A-R-E, R. And I might do that 3 to 5 times. If it's a word that they're somewhat familiar with, we've had it several times, I usually stick to just doing it 3 times. However, if it's a brand new word, or I don't feel like kids are paying attention, or whatever the case might be, I might do it 5 times just to really get that exposure, really get that practice. You would repeat with all of those words, but I'm not going to make you sit through all of that. Then we switch to green. With green, these are our decodable words, and these are tricky because sometimes the words are there and then other times they are not there. They are there to trick us. They are there to look similar to other words so that we have to read the whole way through that word. So with this, I start by highlighting, here's TW, tw. What does that say? You know, maybe guys, we've been talking about this last week. We talked about this last year. Here's a reminder. TW says tw. Again, another research-based strategy. I went to Orton Gillingham training several years ago, so some of you might be very familiar with this. We pound the word. So I usually say, get your pounding fist ready. They give me 2 pounds. And then I'll say, point with your fingers and your eyes. Let's say twig. Twig. That word is twig. See if you can find the word twig in our story. We talk about these endings, how we can add endings to our words. On my board, I have what I call a Mrs. Wilp's list of approved endings, and we can add these to some of our words. So we have twigs. Now, sometimes I do these in order, but then sometimes I say, oh my goodness, guys, I also see we have another tw word. Look at how these words look so similar. And we talk about that. We talk about how they have the same beginning, they have the same middle, but the end is different. And so that just leads us to discussions about reading all the way through the word. In this particular week of my spelling intervention, we're working on double F words. So we would also pound each of those words, find them in the text, and then prepare to read. With reading, I do 3 different readings. So that's what each of these smiley faces are for. So usually I say, okay, grab a marker, meet me at the top, and then we'll read the title. Usually the first reading, I always read to my students. And then after they finish, we color in our first smiley face. And then I'll say, okay, grab a new marker, meet me back at the top in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, giving everybody a chance to get there. And then this is where things vary depending on the group, depending on the ability, how long have they been with me? Are they confident? Are they not? How far do I want to push them? Sometimes we might just do echo reading, Cliff, Fluff, and Tiff, and give them the chance to read. Our cats. They all, and read the way through and color in your next smiley face. But then some groups, that's too slow. That's too slow moving for them. And so we might take turns reading. With this yellow group, I often find that my students are ready to start reading sentences, taking turns, that kind of thing. And so then we might take turns reading, or then I might ask them to whisper read. Sometimes we might choral read. So get creative, be flexible there. It doesn't have to always be exactly the same with every group or every day. You know, week 1, maybe you're doing some echo reading, but maybe by week 10, you're taking turns. Maybe on Mondays you do one thing, but on Thursdays you do something else. Get creative there. Next, graphic organizers are something that is also very research-based, helping kids get their thinking from their heads to the paper. And so with this, I give you full permission to let you be for you to be the writer and your kids to just be active participants in the discussion. Now, if you want them to write, if you want them to copy, some of those things, go for it. If you want to give them some think time and then after they've thought about it, then they start writing, go for it. You know your kids, you know what's best for them, and it's totally, totally fine for you to be the writer initially as you talk through some of these things. So, as I said before, this side of the page or this side of the book is going to be the same every day. You're going to repeat, you'll have a different skill or a different reading target that you're working at. But then over on the right-hand side of the page, then this is where we get to practice some of our other skills like writing and vocabulary, fluency, all of those good things. So with this, we have a sentence that is all mixed up. Not always, but most of the time, it is an exact sentence in the story. So they can look for clues like, ooh, I know a capital letter. That's going to go at the beginning of a sentence. So they all make a house. And ooh, that period goes at the end. So I must have done something right. So next, then we have homographs, words with multiple meanings. And so with this, I talk about, ooh, this means they have the same written word. It is exactly the same on paper. So with this, you can use words from the story, or I have included a list of common multiple meaning words. And so then you can pick and choose kind of whatever works for you. So a lot of times, one is a noun and one is a verb. But I was going to use the word straw because it was actually in our story. And the two versions that I am thinking of happen to both be nouns. But you can talk with your kids on most weeks that most are nouns, most are verbs, or, one of each. So with this, I have the word straw. And I know that in a barn, there might be a bed of straw. Ooh, we'll just turn that into a door to the barn. And sometimes animals, they sleep or rest or eat straw. So that's straw in the barn. But you know what? I love to go to the Polar Pop shop. And at the Polar Pop shop, in my drink, I have a straw. Those are two totally different meanings, but something that kids would be familiar with. And what I want kids to notice is that then, especially in the next level of this series where we get into vowel teams and things like that, we have to know what we're talking about to be able to spell some words. Because sometimes they have the same written word, sometimes they're different. Sometimes what you think the meaning means in context is actually the opposite. So explore some of those words with your kids. Next up, we use another research-based strategy of the Frayer model. And so we have the word huff. And so with this, we have some picture cards that have the definition, synonyms, all of that you can put here. I don't care if kids copy this exact picture or if they think of something else. Maybe they want to do like the big bad dog is going to do here in this story, the big bad wolf, using just some knowledge that they already have. Come up with some antonyms. Ooh, what would be the opposite of that? Just to get kids thinking and talking about words. Day 2. Again, this is going to be exactly the same as the day before, only today we are inferring. With this, their answer would go here. And again, you decide how much or how little writing you want to do. So with this, why should cats not let the dog in? Or why should the cats not let the dog in? Well, maybe they say because he might eat them. Because he might be mean to them, because he's bad, whatever they want to put. And then they can find sentences here to write down. Like it says, he is the big, bad dog. Ooh, he's going to blow the house down. So with this, again, you decide how much or how little writing you want to do. You decide, do you want to share these answers together where we're all writing the same thing? Do you want to give them some think time? Every group can be a little bit different. On this side then, we have a sentence that has 3 mistakes. And so I usually give my students just a few minutes to see if they can find these mistakes. First off, we have some spelling words that are here. I want to see, do they remember that at the end of a 1-syllable short vowel word, we need 2 F's? Do they realize that it's missing punctuation? And we always share these together later, but I like to I need to see what they can remember on their own. Then here we have the word twig and a picture of a twig. And then again, we have the definition, we have some synonyms, but this is called a semantic map. And with a semantic map, this is basically our brain dump. So, twig, what do you think of when you hear the word twig? What do we know? Maybe it comes from here. Maybe we write words like, ooh, it's a limb. Ooh, a limb from a tree. Maybe it's a branch. Ooh, you know what? I remember in this real story of the 3 pigs, one of them made their house out of twigs. Ooh, maybe a shoot. I don't know that the kids would know that. Maybe when you think of twig, you think of playing outside. Maybe you think of, oh, there were twigs after a storm on the ground. Maybe before my dad mows the grass, we have to go pick up sticks or twigs. Maybe the word sticks. This is just a brain dump. See what they know. Talk about it. Pull that background knowledge that they already have. Maybe they aren't familiar with the word twig, but they probably are with a stick. Or maybe they've had to pick it up before their dad mows the grass or after a storm or whatever. So access that background knowledge so that they know, what was this house made of? All right, now we have a base word and an ending. So remember, I've talked a lot about Mrs. Wilp's list of approved endings in many of my videos. And so with this is an ending that can be added to many words. So with this, you can really, there are no rules. Do what works for your students. Maybe they can only use words that are here. Maybe it's any word that comes to mind. Maybe it's maybe the same kid writes the same word all the time. That's okay. Are they understanding that, hey, here's the word see, but it can also be sees. Tell can also be tells. Huff could also be huffs or puffs. Or blow could be blows. Dog could be dogs. There are so many things that you can do here. I give a meaning like this in particular is more than one. But we also know when we're putting it with a verb, it could also mean that it's in the present tense. You can talk about that. You could accept some of those answers, whatever you would want. Sometimes you can also make a list like dogs, cats, tell, Could be tells. Puff. Could be puffs. Obviously, these are verbs, so that ending doesn't quite, or that definition doesn't match. But to me, that would be a conversation in my classroom. We would just talk about that. You can decide how you want to train your students to do it. What I typically do is have my students write one word here, and then in my book, I'm writing what I'm seeing from all of my students at the table, or as they share, I might say, ooh, good, dogs, that's a good one. And I jot that down in my book for everybody. And then if there's somebody sitting at the table who is clueless, doesn't know what to write, they can totally steal from what I have written here. Okay, over here we have an expanded sentence, or a sentence that we need to expand. So it says, the dog will. I mean, that is the complete sentence. We have a subject and a verb, but I need more than that. And so with this, the dog will what? And so oftentimes I get my Post-it notes out and I just start writing down the things that the kids share. So I might say, oh, we could say the big dog will, okay. Maybe we could say something at the end. What is the big dog going to do? So the big dog will huff. The big dog will puff. The big dog will blow the house down. I just take what the kids are sharing and start jotting it down. And then I stick it up here, usually give the students a few minutes, and then start sharing like what their sentences were. Because somebody might have said, the big dog will. Or somebody might have said, the big dog will huff. Those are both good sentences, but they're both different. There's no right or wrong. We could say the big dog will blow the house down. That's a perfect sentence. Maybe somebody says the big dog will blow the house down. All of those are perfect. None of those are bad. No matter how short or how big they make that sentence, give them the opportunity to just play around and work on expanding those sentences. And the nice part is this can then incorporate, or they can apply this in their writing in the classroom, or if you have other opportunities for them to write, because they're used to expanding sentences. All right, then we have a fluency passage. With this, you can set it for whatever period of time you want. With my older kids where they're reading longer passages, a lot of times I do set it for 1 minute. Sometimes with this, 1 minute could just be very frustrating for students. So I might only set it for 30 seconds. Or maybe early in the year it's 30 seconds, later it's 45 seconds, later it's 60 seconds. They don't even have to know the amount of time. But as they finish, I train them to put this little mark right here that's where they finished. So they read, okay, here's 6 words, 7, 8, 9. Some of my higher functioning kids can calculate that on their own. Some need help. Some maybe don't need help at the end of the year, but they definitely do when you're first getting started. Then set the timer again. Ooh, maybe this time they made it here. So 11 words plus 1 more there is 12. And I talk to my students, I don't care about what this number is. I care, are you growing? I care, is that number climbing each time you read? In between readings, I also tell my students, okay, let's say this word gave you some trouble as you were reading. Ask about that before we do reading number 2. Then maybe you get here and that word really slowed you down, so you only improved by 3 words. That's fine. Ask for help with that so that then on your next reading, you can get a little bit better. All right, this might be my very favorite vocabulary activity. So with this is called scaling vocabulary words. So with this, I am going to go with this word here is making me think of the word loud. So I'm going to put loud up here, and I'm going to put quiet down here. And then I'm going to tell students, these words are opposite. What are some other words that might mean loud or might mean quiet or somewhere in between? And we just brainstorm words. So loud, quiet. They could use their thesaurus if needed, whatever. So maybe instead of loud, or maybe another student says silent. Maybe someone else says noisy. Maybe someone else says whisper. Oop. Maybe somebody else says yell. So now that we have our words, you can do as much or as many or as few as you want. It doesn't matter. And so then we work to start putting what is like the strongest word down to the weakest word, or what is kind of one extreme or the other. So maybe loud to me is no longer the beginning. Maybe I think noisy is worse or more severe or more dramatic than loud. Oh, but you know what? Yell maybe is a little lower than that, because maybe only one person is yelling, so it's not that noisy. Okay. I kind of think of silent being a little better than quiet. Like a library could be quiet, but people are still talking. Silent, though, like a moment of silence at school is dead silent. Nobody's talking. A whisper, what would go first? I kind of think quiet and a whisper. A quiet could be like two teachers having a quiet conversation. The room could be somewhat quiet, and that could still be louder than a whisper. So these are just some ways. There's no right or wrong answer. There's no list of words that you have to use. I'm pulling things like, here made me think of loud, but maybe you go with something like huff and puff. Maybe down. Maybe you do the opposite, up and down. You use whatever you need to use. Maybe you're trying to incorporate. Let me give you some backstory. I wanted to include words here, but as I was talking with some other teachers, some people really try to incorporate some vocabulary from the gen ed classroom into their small groups. So maybe that's what this is. Maybe you're pulling words from the gen ed curriculum because they're going to have a test over that in the classroom, and they should have some exposure. They should have some practice. So to me, use whatever word either comes to mind or is required in the classroom or whatever. And then after we've sorted all of those, or after we've kind of scaled them, then with this, you can have your students write down all of the words, some of the words, a few, whatever you want. Maybe they just participate in the Post-it note moving and they never write down anything. That's okay. Maybe you just have them write down the two extremes that you came up with, like loud and quiet. And then the rest is a discussion. All of that is up to you. It might also just depend on what kind of time do you have in your resource room. All right, next up, we have a compound word, doghouse. And so usually I just say this. Here's the word, doghouse. Use your highlighter and circle the two words in doghouse. Give them some time. Then they can circle, they could draw a line in the middle to separate that, whatever you think. Maybe they use two different colors. That is your choice, but just have them listen for each of those words in the compound word. Then it's time to restate and answer. So with this, we talk a lot about, this is a question word. Why did Cliff run to Fluff's house? So, I'm not going to need the word did. Sometimes I do need to save that one. But we could say Cliff. Let's talk about this word run. We need it to really say Cliff ran to Cliff's house. Because, and then why did they do that? So I talk a lot about this at the beginning of the year, that we can't just say because the big bad dog was coming. No, that is depending on whatever grade they're in. I back it up a year. That is a second grade answer. You guys are third graders. We restate and answer. Oop, that sounds like a first grade answer. You guys are second graders. We write incomplete sentences. So Cliff ran to Fluff's house. Ooh, I better pay attention here. To Fluff's house because, ooh, they heard the dog's bell. Whatever that might be. And then a period at the end. Again, same thing here. But over on this side, we have a lot going on with writing and vocabulary. So here we have the dog huffed. The dog could not blow down the house. So I usually have my students circle or highlight the words that are the same. So I see the in both. I see dog in both. So I'm not going to write, when I write this sentence, we're not going to write that again. So, or we're not going to write that 2 times. We're going to write the dog, and then we're kind of done with that. The dog huffed and could not blow down the house. So with this, I have an anchor chart in my room where I write each of these sentences, and then it just has these words written on it. It's just something I made on white paper and laminated so I could use the expo marker on it. But it has these words on it like and, or, both, things like that, so that it's already spelled, it's already there. And then I also have a spot where words like because, I also have that it's just there. And over time, the kids know it, they know where to find it, and they know how to use that. Okay, so next up, we have a fluency check where just like the day before, we're gonna set our timer. We're going to mark things that are here, that we are where we stop, record that number. All right, over here, now we have some, what I would just call some tier 2 words, or some big words. Some words that some kids might know because they have parents who use intelligent words with them. They have good conversations. And then we have others who they don't have those conversations with parents or grandparents at home. Or maybe there's more going on, like with a language impairment, something like that. So it's good to talk about words and see who is angry. Well, again, there's no right answer. Maybe the cats are angry because the dog is after them the whole time. Maybe the dog's angry because the cats keep running away from him. Maybe you could check both. Maybe you check only one. Maybe one student has a really good argument for why the cats were angry. But the dog, he wasn't angry. He was hungry. Or, whatever. Maybe those are the conversations that can happen where one student has cats, but one student has the dog. Creative. Who was creative? Well, I kind of think the cats were creative as they were building these sentences, as he comes down the chimney, all those kinds of things. Brave. Who was brave? Well, I kind of think the cats were brave. They were also scared. Who was mean? All of these things you can have discussions for. And what I like, saying there's no right or wrong answer, like with this, as long as you can prove it, as long as you can support it, have the discussion. Why do you think it's the dog? Why do you think it's the cat? Well, why do you think it's both? How are they both angry? Well, that's possible. Okay, next up, we have homophones. And so again, meaning the same sound, but this time words are spelled differently. So as always, I kind of come look over here and see if anything really just stands out to me as something that I want to use. And in this moment, nothing is really coming to mind. All right, so I am gonna go rogue and I'm gonna use that list of words that has so many things that we can use. Okay, so I'm going to go with a word like 8. 8 could be like, ooh, I ate my dinner, or like the number 8. 8. And then we can draw a picture. I drew this in my last video. It was terrible. I think I made the same mistake that I did. We're just gonna have elbows here that are gonna hold my sandwich. Maybe eyelashes would make this less creepy. Nope, still creepy. All right, so maybe they are going to, you ate lunch and ate the number 8. So with this, here's kind of the run through of the book. One question that I get asked all the time is, well, what if my students don't have time for this? What if my students aren't good at this or can't do this? Or what if I want to? So I want to give you permission right now to do with this intervention what your students need. You know them. This is a tool to help you give them what they need. So if all you make it through is this part and you don't have time for all of this because of your schedule, because of the students in the group, whatever, that's okay. Do what you can. And the rest will be fine. You can pick up at week 2 and start fresh again. Or if you get interrupted, it's fine. So just make sure that you are doing what's best for your students. And if you email, that is totally fine. But sometimes I do think when people are emailing, it's like, guys, if you're thinking this, then you're probably right because you know your students. So thanks so much for watching these directions. And please, if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.